No updates.
About the Austin Eckler situation, any developments there since we last talked in Arizona?
Yeah, not since the owners' meetings. Yeah, no update there either.
Did you have any reaction, or were you surprised at all the contract numbers that came out for Jalen Hurts, or is that about where you expect the quarterback market to go?
His contract hasn't been submitted yet, so I haven't seen it. So I'll probably look at it when the draft's over, but I haven't seen any of the numbers yet.
And then on Austin Eckler situation, have you guys received any interest from other teams regarding Austin?
It's the same answer I gave you guys before. I got no updates there.
How does Austin's situation maybe inform your approach to the draft when it comes to running back? Do you have to, think about contingencies in case, something ends up going down with Austin?
I don't think so. We had Josh Kelly and Larry Roundtree here, and then we drafted Isaiah Spiller last year. Isaiah kind of fits in that category of players from previous drafts having to step up and fill needs. Typically, like in this year's draft, not a lot of these guys are going to come in to fill a need. I know when you look at the draft, you draft players in the third, fourth, fifth, sixth rounds, and people think they're going to come in and immediately fill a need. You hope they come in and earn a role, but you're really looking for players from previous draft classes to rise up. J.T. Woods, John Taylor, Isaiah Spiller, and some other guys have those guys step into roles. But we think it's a pretty good room right now, so wouldn't necessarily look at it like that.
Tom, now that you're fully into the draft, I'm sure you've done all the research you're going to do. Is it fall? Can you just kind of characterize the top whatever in your mind in terms of? I think you mentioned before there's usually 16 to 18 first-round graded guys. Is that proving to be true? And then how deep is it in terms of what you might be able to get second or third round?
It depends what position. It's all very subjective. It really is. Like we're trying to project these players. They're college players. We're projecting them to be professional players, but it's a very subjective process. Our first-round numbers are, kind of where they usually are. The depth of the draft, it's hard to tell. Like each position's a little bit different. The only one that really kind of stands out, just because in previous years we've seen less and less college tight ends coming into the NFL. For whatever reason this year, there's a whole bunch of, really true tight ends that are coming into the league. Hopefully that continues because that pool has been getting smaller and smaller. But other than that, it's like I said, it's really pretty subjective.
How much with the tight ends is it maybe that this group has stayed in college a year longer because of the COVID year and everything, that they've had a chance to maybe become more well-rounded?
I don't know, possibly. It is a position that requires some physicality and blocking at the line of scrimmage, so to grow in your body a little bit. Now, that being said, there's a couple of tight ends in this draft that are 21 years old, with just 3 years of college ball. So, but that could play into it, but it kind of would play into it with all positions, I'd assume.
When you guys evaluate tight ends, just on a general level, what are the key attributes that you're looking for from that position?
Blocking and receiving. That's the ideal tight end. Can do both.
Tom, just sorry, going back to
That's true, right?
Yeah, I'd like a little more detail
Yeah.
though.
Go ahead.
Justin, when you say no updates, that means nothing you can share with us, or that nothing has been happening?
What I said before, like we won't do like a play-by-play or characterize where things are. The next big update will be if there's ever a contract signing. So I really can't imagine ever being up here and kind of giving, where we are when we talk. That's probably not the way it's going to work.
Has he decided to exercise a 50-year option on him, or can it?
So we've got 2 first-round picks from that draft, and we'll get that figured out next week.
And not to jump around here, but
It's okay.
With going back to Isaiah,
Yep.
we know how young he is, still is.
Yeah.
What do you, in terms of making that jump? What has to happen between now and the start of the season for him to get more playing time than maybe for us to see him more than we did last year?
Yeah, I just like a lot of players from last year's draft. They have a full off season in the program, and we like Isaiah. We liked him a lot when we drafted him. He's 225-pound running back who's 5'11" and has great vision and can make people miss. And he was stuck behind some players last year, and he'll get a chance to come in and compete and earn a job this year. We'd like to have seen him get a little bit more run last year, but there were some players in front of him. So, but he's still the same talent we saw last year, and like a lot of these players, They may earn roles more towards the middle or the back end of their rookie contract, maybe not right at the beginning, which is okay, which is normal, and kind of take it from there.
How many players would you say you guys have first round grades?
Yeah, I don't want to give the exact number there. So
Going back to the tight end attributes, you mentioned blocking before receiving. Does that mean that's more important, or do you wait?
no, not necessarily. It was just in alphabetical order. Isn't this fun?
Yeah.
Yeah, this is great, isn't it?
Your guys' approach to first-round players, generally speaking, do you want that player to be, a couple, like last two drafts, for example, you drafted players that come and started right away. Is that the ideal scenario for a first-round pick, or would you be okay taking a player that you know would potentially be in a rotational role?
Yeah, good question. It really depends where your roster is currently. Ideally, even your first-round pick, if he's coming in and just has to earn a role and doesn't have to step into a starting role immediately, that's fine. It means you have a pretty strong football team. So you'd like to construct it where going into the draft you feel like you're solid across the positions where you don't have to go not reach for somebody, but really feel forced to take a certain position. So I feel like that's where we are right now, so you can kind of let the draft come to you. There really aren't very many spots we couldn't use a player at, other than maybe quarterback and left tackle right now. So we'll kind of see how it plays out. But I feel like our roster is in a point where we're not forced to go one direction or another.
You caught yourself there. You don't usually like the word reach.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense to me, but
Is this the happiest you've been with your offensive line in probably the last 5 to 6 years?
hard to characterize that. But I mean, I like the guys up front. I think we had talked about it before. Getting Trey Pipkins back was pretty important for us. Kind of keep some continuity up front. Plus, he's a good player. Still need to add some depth to that position group because you never know if those 5 guys are going to line up for all 17 games. But now we feel good about it. I think it's just a strong point of the football team.
With Kellen Moore being here, how much kind of communication have you guys had about what he needs or wants for his offense?
Well, it's both Kellen and Derek, because Derek's our new coordinator. So both those guys a lot. And what's great about them is they're very direct. There's not a lot of gray area, which makes my job a lot easier. As far as what a player, does he fit, does he not fit, what characteristics they like about him, what characteristics they may not like about a player. So the conversation has been really good. Those 2 coordinators plus the special teams coordinator plus head coach, obviously, big part of the process, big part to tie everything together. So, but those conversations, they've been great.
Kellen talked a lot about, was asked a lot, and then spoke a lot about speed in his introductory news conference. Is speed something you guys are going to be looking for in the draft?
I've never met a coach who didn't want speed. I've never met a GM who didn't want speed, nor a scout. So, you want it at every position. Same with Derek, and certainly same with Ryan Ficken, all the same.
And you guys re-signing Jalen Guyton, what do you hope he can bring back to the mix this year?
Hopefully where he was, pre-injury. Jalen's been a really productive vertical threat for us, and the production has been there as far as yards per catch. So, he's a bigger receiver that runs very well. He's still in his rehab process. He probably, he won't be full go in OTAs, but as we get closer to training camp, hopefully he's ready to go and he comes in and hopefully can bring that same element.
Re-signing him doesn't change your mind going into whatever you guys had for receiver. Re-signing him doesn't change the way you guys were approaching the draft already?
I mean, when the season ended last year, we were hoping to bring him back. So, yeah, nothing changed there.
We last talked to DeAndre, is gone now, Carter.
Mm-hmm.
Is that, I suspect, the kick returner is something you're going to have to add here at some point in the next few months?
Kick returner, punt returner, probably have to look at it in a couple different areas and have some people come in and compete for that job.
In terms of the draft, when talking to Ryan about needs on special teams, can you assess in terms of returner in this draft class, maybe possibilities?
I think there's plenty of possibilities there. Whether it works out or not, it's a different story. But yeah, there's plenty of possibilities there.
Do you guys lean more towards guys who have a ton of experience doing both in college, or is that more of a projection?
It's going to be a projection a little bit because if you just go based on who did a lot of punts and kicks together, your pool's going to be pretty small. So I think you do have to project out a little bit.
In the past, whether it was Phillip or even Justin, you guys have had a veteran quarterback who's been here for numerous years. Is Easton now the number 2, or are you guys thinking about maybe possibly bringing in another backup quarterback to?
I mean, we'll go to at least to camp, at least 3, maybe 4, we'll see. But we're excited about Easton and kind of step into this role. We've seen him for a number of years. He's really sharp. He's athletic. He's tough. Just doesn't have a lot of snaps under his belt yet, which happens to back up sometimes. But we have a lot of confidence in him, and we'll kind of see how it plays out in the preseason.
Sticking with quarterback, obviously the Chargers don't need one, but with the teams in the top half of the first round, let's say, how did their need for a quarterback affect you if those positions go higher and cause the players to fall?
Yeah, I see at least 6 going in the top 15, at least 6 quarterbacks, maybe 7 if we can get lucky. But it does certainly it helps us. The more that go earlier, it's going to push players down. So luckily this year we're in a position that we wouldn't be taking a quarterback in the first round, and luckily this year there's some good quarterbacks that hopefully go high. So yeah, it's definitely a benefit to us.
Can you name the 7?
I'll name 8 or 9 if we have to, get them all up there.
Is there enough depth with quarterbacks, though, that you might be in the market for 1 day 3?
Who knows? Kind of see how the board kind of falls, but don't get that specific on it.
What's the most important or biggest thing that you guys get out of the top 30 visits?
A lot of it's a medical if a player wasn't at the combine. Second part of that is just have a chance for our coaches to meet players, get a good feel for their football learning, what they've been asked to do with their school visits or their school when they played at their school. So just a little bit of familiarity. Sometimes for a player, maybe a late draft pick, college free agent, it's kind of a recruiting visit, I guess you could say. But since the combine only has so many players, if we want to take players late in the draft, I would prefer to have a physical on that player than not. So a lot of these players are coming in, if they weren't at the combine, would kind of need a full medical on the player.
Are the local pro days a benefit because you don't have to use your 30 visits on one of them?
That is one of the reasons. Boy, having a local day out here is amazing because we could have invited 80 to 100 players if we could. There's so much talent on here, not only between USC, UCLA, and San Diego State, but just all the local high school talent that's from here. So it's a pretty cool day to have those kids come in and work. Every year there may be some players that we maybe have late that kind of flash to us there. But yeah, it's a great benefit to have that many really kind of good players be right in front of our coaches for a full day.
When you guys are scouting like slot corners, nickel players, and Brandon's defense specifically, how much of that is seeing them play inside in college, and how much of it is maybe projecting that move inside, like say like with Asante, for example? You guys think?
Yeah, I mean it's kind of like we talk about with returners. I mean, yeah, you'd like to see them play a lot inside. It's a little easier evaluation, but you do have to project some of it too, or else your pool of players is going to be pretty small. So there's definitely some characteristics that you can see if a player only plays outside that may translate to play inside. Ideally, if you're drafting a player, you'd like to be able to do both, because through the course of the season, you only have 4 or 5, maybe 6, if you're lucky, 6 on your active roster. So they have to be able to do some different things. But scouting is really about projecting. I mean, we're projecting a college player to a pro player, so you're going to have to put some of that into it.
What kind of progress is J.C. Jackson making in his recovery?
Really good. Really good. He's he looks great for where he is right now. Now he's still got some ways to go, but saw him running in the weight room the other day on the treadmill. He looked really good. So hopefully that keeps progressing the same way.
Do you think he'll be ready to participate in training camp?
That's the hope. Yeah, we're still about 3 months from there, but that's the hope. Optimistic on that.
I don't believe you've traded back in the draft before. Is that just the circumstances? Is that something you try to avoid? And then is going into this year, do you feel any sense that it's more likely or could happen this year, or no?
I guess we like to zig while others zag. I don't, no. We're always open to any options, up or down. Yeah, there's no philosophy on that to not do that.
Given your roster situation right now, it feels like you need some more depth guys who can come in and contribute pretty quickly. Would that increase the chances that maybe you would look to, if you could get another?
I've never been a part of a draft where we looked at our football team and said, boy, we are so loaded on both sides of the ball and special teams that we don't need any depth. So this year is no different. So.
How are you feeling overall assessment of the receiving group in this year's draft? Maybe not as many, top tier receiving options as maybe in years past, but some depth in that late first, early second area.
I mean, you just never know. Look where Stephon Diggs was drafted. I mean, you just never know. We're projecting. It's a cute word to say, but we're making educated guesses on these players. We really are. So how things may look now, where you're drafted in this draft is not your final determination of how you perform in this league. I mean, you can look back at every single draft, and that's not the way it works out. So, we can all have these opinions on what positions look strong or weak, but in the end, do we really know? It's just so subjective. So, the receiver group, I think there's so many receivers that come out of college nowadays, and I think a lot of it has to do with the amount of 7-on-7 work in the summer, the amount of passing that they do in the high school level, the amount of passing they do at the college level. So it's a lot more receivers that come in the league ready to play. That being said, this group is, probably similar to some others. Maybe not some of the size that some other groups have had. There's probably a good amount of actually corners and receivers that are a little smaller than what you would typically have coming into the league, but they have a lot of other characteristics that make up for it. So we'll see how it plays out.
By coming in ready to play, is that more athletic ability than maybe refined route running and technical
No, I
skills?
think a lot of it's the technical skills. There's some receivers in this draft that are outstanding route runners. A lot of that comes from really good coaching and players being coachable, both at the high school level and the college level.
How do you feel about your linebacker depth?
Like every single position will always take more depth. That's the nature of this league.
Tito out on the field last week. I don't believe Austin Johnson how is Austin doing in his return?
Everything's good so far. Yeah.
Has he been around here? Is he training here or no?
Actually, I don't know who was on the field last week, or today for that matter. So I don't even know. So, but those two guys are really more still in rehab mode. They're not in workout mode yet. Both those guys.
Tom, how challenging it just where you guys are in the draft with your pick? How challenging is it to kind of forecast or guess what's going to happen?
It's hard. I try, but if I did a mock draft and we did mock drafts, who know? There's nothing saying that mine would know more than yours. To be honest with you, I don't know what other people are going to do. Everyone thinks they do, but I just don't think. It's just like nobody gives out information. So you make educated guesses based on where their roster is, where their depth charts are, the style of players that they like, the schemes they play. But in the end, it's hard to tell. But I still go through the whole process trying to figure it out. But obviously, the farther you're down in the draft, the harder it is to project who's going to be there. So where we are this year, we'll have to have a bigger pool of players available to us, and then also account for if you have to trade up or trade down, and kind of take it from there. But yeah, I go through the same forecasting and trying to figure out. It's sometimes a lost cause.
Do you enjoy this process?
I enjoy the process of trying to manage the draft, to try and, okay, these are the players we really like in all these different rounds, and how do we get them? So I do enjoy that part a lot.
Not like the dentist.
Not like a trip to dentist, no. No.
Does that surprise you, like when Derwin and 18 dropped to you guys, like, does that kind of stuff surprise you when a guy that talented just keeps on falling in the draft, or are you basically prepared for almost everything?
You try and be prepared for everything, but not necessarily when people fall. It just maybe those players were rated on other people's boards. So but you have to be prepared for everything because you just don't know. There's 32 teams. Their draft boards are all different, which is normal. It's a very subjective process, and which makes it kind of exciting from if you're going to watch the draft, you just don't know what's going to happen. But the biggest part of the draft, the last month or so, is just preparation of what could happen and be prepared for it.
Do you guys do a mock draft?
Yes, yeah. And then so these mock draft simulators online have been great. I've probably gone through like 25, 30 times just going through different scenarios to see if something could pop up that we're not prepared for. So, yeah.
Which simulator are you using?
I've used a couple different ones. What I like is they're quick. They kind of scroll through fast. You can kind of change different settings, and it's all like mental exercises because, obviously you're making decisions with a clock over your head, so you really can't wait till you're on the clock and then start talking to people, decide what you want to do. So kind of have a plan laid out of what could happen and kind of take it from there.
How do you feel about going on the road again for the first round?
Yeah, I haven't thought about the location too much. We'll get our work done there.
And is that one of the maybe negative effects of COVID that prove that you can basically conduct a draft from anywhere now?
Well, we're doing the main draft in a train station in Kansas City.
Yeah.
And then we're doing our draft room in,
2014, Tom.
yeah. Wait, what was that again?
They've been going on the road to
Yeah.
different cities.
No, yeah, I know. I'll do it wherever I need to do it from, so.
Green
Yep.
endorsement.
I mean, it's as long as you have your people with you, and we have an internet and a cell phone just in case, and a draft board, we could do it in this room, we could do it over there, we can do it anywhere, so.
You gotta have your surfboard?
I hadn't even thought about that yet. Been pretty
So-
busy.
So
Yeah.
by doing a draft anywhere, would you allow us into the room while you're doing the draft?
All of you?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm gonna say no on that one.